Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing, where today we will be continuing to read The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. So, let's get going. You probably will if you do what you are told to do and not give way to your temper, and stay out a great deal in the fresh air. Colin's tantrum had passed, and he was weak and worn out with crying, and this perhaps made him feel gentle. He put out his hand a little toward Mary, and I am glad to say that, her own tantrum having passed, she was softened too and met him halfway with her hand, so that it was a sort of making up. I'll go out with you, Mary, he said. I shan't hate fresh air if we can find... He remembered just in time to stop himself from saying, if we can find the secret garden. And he ended, I shall like to go out with you if Dickon will come and push my chair. I do so want to see Dickon and the fox and the crow. The nursery made the tumbled bed, and shook and straightened the pillows. Then she made Colin a cup of beef tea, and gave a cup to Mary, who really was very glad to get it after her excitement. Mrs. Medlock and Martha gladly slipped away, and after everything was neat and calm, and in order, the nurse looked as if she would very gladly slip away also. She was a healthy young woman who resented being robbed of her sleep, and she yawned quite openly as she looked at Mary, who had pushed her big footstool close to the four-posted bed, and was holding Colin's hand. You must go back and get your sleep out, she said. He'll drop off after a while, if he's not too upset. Then I'll lie down myself in the next room. Would you like me to sing you that song I learned from my ayah? Mary whispered to Colin. His hand pulled hers gently, and he turned his tired eyes on her appealingly. Oh yes, he answered. It's such a soft song. I shall go to sleep in a minute. I will put him to sleep, Mary said to the yawning nurse. You can go if you like. Well, said the nurse, with an attempt at reluctance, if he doesn't go to sleep in half an hour, you must call me. Very well, answered Mary. The nurse was out of the room in a minute, and as soon as she was gone, Colin pulled Mary's hand again. I almost told, he said, but I stopped myself in time. I won't talk and I'll go to sleep, but you said you had a whole lot of nice things to tell me. Do you think you have found out anything at all about the way into the secret garden? Mary looked at his poor little tired face and swollen eyes, and her heart relented. Yes, she answered, I think I have. And if you will go to sleep, I will tell you tomorrow. His hand quite trembled. Oh, Mary, he said. Oh, Mary, if I could get into it, I think I should live to grow up. Do you suppose that instead of singing the ayah song, you could just tell me softly as you did that first day, what you imagine it looks like inside? I am sure it will make me go to sleep. Yes, answered Mary. Shut your eyes. He closed his eyes and lay quite still, and she held his hand and began to speak very slowly, and in a very low voice. I think it has been left alone so long that it has grown all into a lovely tangle. I think the roses have climbed and climbed and climbed, until they hang from the branches and walls, and creep over the ground, almost like a strange grey mist. Some of them have died, but many are alive, and when the summer comes there will be curtains and fountains of roses. I think the ground is full of daffodils and snowdrops, and lilies and iris working their way out of the dark. Now the spring has begun. Perhaps. The soft drone of her voice was making him stiller and stiller, and she saw it and went on. Perhaps they are coming up through the grass. Perhaps there are clusters of purple crocuses and gold ones even now. Perhaps the leaves are beginning to break out and uncurl, and perhaps the grey is changing and a green gauze veil is creeping and creeping over everything. And the birds are coming to look at it, because it is so safe and still. And perhaps, Perhaps, very softly and slowly indeed, the robin has found a mate and is building a nest. And Colin was asleep. Chapter 18. Thou munnot waste no time. Of course, Mary did not waken early the next morning. She slept late because she was tired, and when Martha brought her breakfast, she told her that though Colin was quite quiet. Colin was quite quiet. He was ill and feverish, as he always was after he had worn himself out with a fit of crying. Mary ate her breakfast slowly as she listened. He says he wishes thou would please go and see him as soon as thou can, Martha said. It's queer what a fancy he's took to thee. Thou did give it him last night for sure, didn't thou? Nobody else would have dared to do it. Eh, poor lad, he's been spoiled till salt won't save him. Mother says as two worst things as can happen to a child is to never have his own way, or always to have it. She doesn't know which is worst. Thou was in a fine temper thyself too, but he says to me when I went into his room, please ask Miss Mary if she'll please come and talk to me. Think o' him saying please. Will you go, miss? I'll run and see Dickon first, said Mary. No, I'll go and see Colin first and tell him. I know what I'll tell him, with a sudden inspiration. She had her hat on when she appeared in Colin's room, and for a second he looked disappointed. He was in bed, his face was pitifully white, and there were dark circles round his eyes. I'm glad you came, he said. My head aches and I ache all over because I'm so tired. Are you going somewhere? Mary went and leaned against his bed. I won't be long, she said. I'm going to Dickon, but I'll come back. Colin, it's something about the garden. His whole face brightened, and a little colour came into it. Oh, is it? He cried out. I dreamed about it all night, and I heard you say something about grey changing into green, and I dreamed I was standing in a place all filled with trembling little green leaves, and there were birds on nests everywhere, and they looked so soft and still. I'll lie and think about it until you come back. In 5 minutes, Mary was with Dickon in their garden. The fox and the crow were with him again, and this time he had brought 2 tame squirrels. I came over on pony this morning, he said. Hey, he is a good little chap, Jump is. I brought these 2 in my pockets. This here one, he's called Nut, and this here other one is called Shell. When he said Nut, one squirrel leaped onto his right shoulder, and when he said Shell, the other one leaped onto his left shoulder. When they sat down on the grass, with Captain curled at their feet, Soot solemnly listening on a tree, and Nut and Shell nosing about close to them, it seemed to Mary that it would be scarcely bearable to leave such delightfulness. But when she began to tell her story, somehow the look in Dickon's funny face gradually changed her mind. She could see he felt sorrier for Colin than she did. He looked up at the sky and all about him. Just listen to them birds. The world seems full of 'em, all whistling and piping, he said. Look at 'em darting about, and hearken at 'em calling to each other. Come springtime seems like as if all world's calling. The leaves is uncurling so you can see 'em, and my word, the nice smells there is about. Sniffing with his happy turned up nose, and that poor lad lying shut up and seeing so little that he gets to thinking of things as sets him screaming. Eh my, we mun get him out of here. We mun get him watching and listening and sniffing up air with air and get him just soaked through with sunshine. And we mun not lose no time about it. And with that, we come to the end of the reading, because we are also basically at the end of the episode. So, as per usual, I will say thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.